Our YouTube, so we're back, of course, talking about some more Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we are once again revisiting the topic of exclusivity, and in this case, we're really just talking about Xbox, because it's kind of a popular topic again, because Microsoft has been wanting to acquire Activision Blizzard for quite some time now. I haven't followed the whole story or whatever the case. But there's a lot of people that disagree with the acquisition because they think it'll create a monopoly, which is pretty odd if you think about it, just given that PlayStation has more than double the audience that Xbox does. So if there's any sort of monopoly here, it would clearly be on the PlayStation/Sony side. Now, the topic of Remake coming to the Xbox platform is something we've discussed over the years quite a few times, and we wouldn't come back to it if not for a reason, because in a recent reply to the UK CMA, Microsoft had specifically mentioned games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy XVI, Bloodborne, etc. as these massive exclusives that the Sony platform, the PlayStation platform have. And really, the exclusivity only exists to hurt the Xbox platform. Let's be honest here. That's the only platform it's not coming to, right? Because these games usually end up coming to PC, like we've seen with Remake. And it was probably going to happen with 16 in the future as well. So we're just going to read over this article to get a little more insight into exactly what's happening. And it says, in reply to the UKC made back in October, Microsoft has stated that Sony has permanently blocked popular titles such as Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy XVI, Bloodborne, and Silent Hill 2 Remaster, which is actually a remake, from coming to the Xbox. Microsoft, in turn, will be making 3 upcoming Bethesda games, likely Starfield, Redfall, and another unknown title, Xbox and PC exclusive. Microsoft's $68.7 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard is not going down well with regulators, with the Redmond giant having to respond to both the US Federal Trade Commission and the UK CMA on the need for the deal to go through. Back in October, Microsoft confirmed to the UK CMA that Sony, on its part, has set up permanent Xbox exclusion deals for several titles on the PlayStation. According to Microsoft, Sony has effectively prevented games such as Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy XVI, Bloodborne, and Silent Hill 2 Remaster from coming to the Xbox, the company said. In addition to having outright exclusive content, Sony has also entered into arrangements with third-party publishers which require the exclusion of Xbox from the set of platforms these publishers can distribute their games on. Some prominent examples of these agreements include Final Fantasy VII Remake, Bloodborne, the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI, and the recently announced Silent Hill 2 Remastered. Now, before we continue with this discussion, I want to clarify that I have no bias in this conversation. I own all the platforms. I have an next-gen, or I guess current-gen Xbox. I have a PS5. I have a Switch. I have a Xbox One and a PS4. I own it all, right? So there's no bias here. But I find myself reading this shit and seeing the people that are super against this acquisition, and I find myself on the side of Microsoft because I just find it so absurd. Because we've had this conversation a lot about where's Remake on Xbox. It just really doesn't make sense. And in a handful of months, Remake's 3 years old. The exclusivity deal came to an end literally a year ago because the game came to Epic in December of last year, December 2021. There's really not a reason that Remake isn't on Xbox at this point unless there's just literally a deal preventing that from happening because it doesn't make sense. And obviously, it makes even less sense with the release of Crisis Core Reunion, which we just got, a couple weeks ago, or whatever the case. And that is a game that is a prequel to FF7 Original, but also in ways a prequel to Remake, of course. And that launched on everything. So it makes even less sense. It's you can play Crisis Core Reunion on your Xbox One or your Series X or S, but you can't play Remake on that platform. There's something odd about this whole situation. Again, kind of further adding to that narrative that Microsoft has of them not allowing Remake on Xbox. And also the upcoming 16, of course. 16 is also PS5 exclusive, which means it's probably coming to PC at the end of that exclusivity and probably not coming to Xbox. And again, I just find this argument and discussion that people have of Xbox creating this monopoly so baseless whenever the PlayStation platform has double the audience, right? It was some report came out some time ago, a couple years ago, that the PS4 had sold 100 million units plus or some shit. The Xbox One was only 40 or 50 million units at the time. So literally the PS4 had double the audience than the Xbox One. So again, if there's any sort of monopoly when it comes to these consoles, I don't know what the Switch does and stuff, but between the two consoles, clearly PlayStation has the monopoly there, and Xbox is just playing catch up, if anything. And obviously a big part of this acquisition would be the Call of Duty franchise. Now you're getting other shit with Activision Blizzard, right? You're getting Overwatch, you're getting World of Warcraft, you're getting Hearthstone and some other stuff. But Call of Duty is massive. Every single year, Call of Duty is one of the best-selling games. But I don't think they would go the route of making that particular franchise exclusive because it'd just be stupid. Because it's been on every platform for a long time. And with what it is these days with crossplay and Warzone itself being super, super huge, and that's on every single platform as well, you couldn't really make the Call of Duty franchise exclusive, at least right now, maybe some years down the road if they wanted to go that route, but I think it would kill the franchise if you could only play Call of Duty on Xbox. It'd just be stupid. And actually, speaking of Call of Duty, PlayStation has had the exclusivity rights to that for so long, where they get exclusive stuff. I know me and the boys were playing Cold War the last couple of years, and there's exclusive zombies game modes in Cold War where you could like play like the zombies game mode, but in like the actual multiplayer maps and stuff. It's pretty cool. Didn't have access to it. And there's also like exclusive like updates when it came to PlayStation. I don't remember which games it was over the last couple of years, but like PlayStation would have like a couple weeks, like a month or so before the Xbox platform was, because we always would sit there and talk about it as we're playing, and I'd fill in the boys with what's going on in the future of the game because we didn't have access to it yet. So like the audacity of PlayStation like screaming at exclusivity and monopoly and blah 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 when they've had this shit for several years now with this franchise. Something else I find kind of hilarious about this whole situation, too, is people have been talking shit on Xbox for so long about their lack of exclusives, which is true, right? PlayStation has the far superior library if we're talking exclusives. So Microsoft starts making moves in recent years, right? Like, they want to buy, ZeniMax Media, which gives them all of the Bethesda stuff. So we're turning stuff like Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and the upcoming Starfield into potential exclusives to the Xbox platform. And then looking towards the Activision Blizzard acquisition as well. People are like, yo, slow down. But it's like, man, y'all the ones talking shit. Y'all been giving Xbox shit for so many years now. They have far, far deeper pockets than Sony. Like, they could buy Sony if they wanted to. They have that kind of money. That's obviously a deal that would have never go through, but they got that kind of deep pockets. If it was possible, they could. And of course, Sony acquires studios too. They're buying up studios as well in the last couple of years. They bought Bungie this year for almost $4 billion. Now, that's not comparable to the almost $70 billion acquisition with Activision Blizzard, but still, like, they're buying up studios too. Like, they're buying even more exclusive shit. So it's like, I don't know, the conversation's just dumb to me. Anyways, kind of get back on topic with this video with the Final Fantasy franchise. You guys have heard me say over the last couple of years that I've never really been a fan of the fact that Remake was PlayStation exclusive, because it didn't really make sense given that, stuff like 13 and also like 15 were on everything, right? Now 14 is obviously PlayStation exclusive, but like the previous release, big release before Remake came out was 15, which was on every platform. So it was just kind of odd. And also, I wasn't really a fan of the fact that I had to go out and buy a PS4 just to play Remake, because I didn't own one at the time. Now, in doing so, I've got to like play a lot of fantastic exclusive games on the PlayStation brand. But all the same, I had to drop, $200+ just to play Remake, essentially. Which, if I didn't do YouTube, I might not have done that. And I kind of hop back to that quote that we got from Microsoft about these games not being able to come out on the Xbox platform. This isn't necessarily confirmation of that. That's just what they're saying. We don't know 100% if it's truthful. It's still very, very possible. I know people argue against it all the time. The Remake's never coming to fucking Xbox, but that, I don't think it's 100%. It could come down the road. Like something like Zodiac Age, right? Zodiac Age was on PS4 only, and eventually came to Xbox like 2 or 3 years down the road, right? So it's not even unheard of for how long it's been since Remake's launched. It could still very much come to Xbox. I just don't know what they would do. Would they do, I saw this somewhat recently actually in something, would they just do base game Remake on Xbox One, or would they just do integrate on the Series X and S? I don't know what they would do there. Maybe both. And hell, another example I've given in multiple videos is Final Fantasy XIV. Despite that game being, PlayStation exclusive for a decade plus at this point, it's supposed to come to Xbox at some point. Yoshi's talked about this, and even Phil Spencer this year has talked about Final Fantasy XIV hitting Xbox at some point. So if Final Fantasy XIV of all goddamn things can come to Xbox, then Remake sure as hell can too. It's just a matter of if and when. But also, it's entirely possible that Microsoft has some insider knowledge, and maybe they know for a fact that, something like Remake is never coming to Xbox, and same thing with 16. I guess it remains to be seen as the years go on. That's more or less the video, my dudes. I don't know how much more we can say about this. We've talked about this shit so many times over the last couple of years. We're just eventually repeating ourselves if we keep talking about it in this video. Will we ever see Xbox get Final Fantasy VII Remake? If I had to give you an answer, I'd probably say no. Now, I don't think it's impossible. It's kind of the point of what I was talking about earlier with like 14 and shit like that. It's not an impossibility, but the fact that, the exclusivity ended a year ago, and we've seen nothing, heard nothing about Remake coming to Xbox, and Microsoft themselves are saying that Remake's not coming to Xbox, you kind of got to think that's the case at this point. Anyways, my dudes, I'll have some shit linked in the description below if you want to read up on this. There's like a massive PDF file out there. It's like 100-something pages, which is where Microsoft mentions these games and Sony and stuff like that. If you want to read through that goddamn massive thing, we're going to look at it, but it's too goddamn big. That's the video, my dudes. Subscribe to me if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.